Welcome to the University of Wolverhampton's celebration of the International Day for Disabled People. It's great that we can celebrate this day, and it's great that we've got the guest speaker that we actually have, who I'm going to introduce in a few moments. So welcome. We will be taking questions. We are recording, and I will be going through some housekeeping once we're actually got everybody started and into the session. We'll just leave it a couple more minutes before, as people just start to join us. If you do join us throughout, then we will be doing some housekeeping in a moment to just cover the way that this is being recorded. So we'll make a start then. So welcome and hello. This is the United Nations Day for International Day for People with Disabilities. And as co-chair of our Disabled Staff Network, it's my great privilege to introduce our speaker, Sam Rapp. Sam and I met as we were both doing keynotes at London South Bank University, and I was absolutely blown away by Sam's story. And she's an incredibly inspirational woman, and I'm not going to steal her thunder by telling you all about her, because she can do that herself. But it's my great pleasure to introduce Sam. She's going to do a talk and then ask for questions at the end, so please feel free to use the question and answer to put your questions to Sam into that. Please don't, because we are recording, don't put personal information, email addresses, phone numbers, things like that, as those will be recorded as well. So without further ado, over to you, Sam. Thank you very much for being our keynote today.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Megan, for that lovely introduction. And thank you for inviting me to present at Wolverhampton University. It's an absolute honour and privilege to be here. Thank you to all the delegates, and thank you to Amrit for doing the slides. I really appreciate that, your help. And as Megan said, it's the International United Nations Day for Disability. So we're looking at various themes about disability and leadership, and of course my story. So if we go to the next slide, please. Whilst the slide's loading, and that's me, that's my little picture there, I also do a little bit of housekeeping. And the first one is really, can you hear me all right? You can shout out or put your thumbs up, however you feel. And is this pace of delivery okay for you? Thumbs up or shout out. Now, I'm glad in a way, I mean, it'd be lovely to see you in a lecture hall giving this presentation, but I'm also glad that I'm not there in a way, because if we have to do a fire alarm drill or anything like that in terms of the exits, never, ever, ever follow me, because I will go into it in a bit more detail, but I'm also dyspraxic. And that means I get confused with my left and right. So if you see me running, I'm definitely going the wrong way. So don't worry about that. So, but we don't have to worry about that because we're on Zoom. So that's fantastic. So, so this is me. My name is Sam Rapp. I am neurodiverse. And I'll go through exactly what that all is in a moment. My background is quite interesting. I'm one of those Heinz 57. I come from a mixed heritage background. My mother was Irish, Austrian and Polish mix. My father was Russian, Jewish, Egyptian mix. So definitely a kind of Heinz 57 mixed heritage. My mother was an entertainer, a singer, dancer and actor, and my father was a forklift truck driver, lorry driver, salesman. I had a sister and a half brother, and unfortunately, as we were growing up, there were some difficulties in our home life with domestic violence and problems with relationships in that way. But we're looking at leadership and positivity, so it's not going to all be negative, not negative at all. But just to give you that flavour of some of the background of what we were dealing with at that time, which of course anything about domestic violence does impact upon your mental health. So I'm a writer, I'm a poet, a playwright, a short story writer. I'm also a part-time lawyer and campaigner for disability awareness, looking at equality, diversity and inclusion at the heart of what I do. I have a company called Fun with Words Productions, where I go into schools, colleges, universities, businesses, everywhere, whoever will have me, and do creative writing workshops, making writing fun for all abilities, whether you can write or not, from age 0 to 110. That's what I do. But in relation to me, I kind of always knew that I was a bit different. I struggled with things and I didn't know why, because I was never diagnosed as a child. And I didn't want to tell anybody that I thought there was something not quite right, but I didn't want that stigma or to be treated differently. So I kind of struggled along for a while. So if we go to the next slide, please. So that is my brain, and I'm very proud of my brain. It's on the right side, so I would say I'm pretty right on, because that's my brain. I'm dyslexic and proud, and this is my neurodiversity, because I like to be different. It's great to be different and celebrate who you are, because you are unique and you shouldn't have to apologize for who you are. So I'm proud of that brain. When I first saw that picture, I thought, oh, now I know. But that's who I am. I'm dyslexic and proud. So let's go to the next slide, please. So I've alluded to the fact that I'm neurodiverse. I'm dyslexic. So I struggle with writing, spelling, organization, sequencing, working memory. And I sometimes have poor timekeeping. It's just a chaotic way sometimes my brain works. So I use software to assist me with organization, something called Mind View, where you can actually work out a sort of mind map of giving you a list of things to do, which helps me. I also use orange a lot. You'll see some of my background is in orange, although I'm wearing lots of different colors today, pinks and greens and things, because I can actually read better in orange. And my dyslexia is like visual dyslexia. I do have phonetic dyslexia as well. Sometimes I have to spell out words like you'd see with a 5-year-old, sort of ah, e, ah, like that. So that's the dyslexic side. Dyspraxic, I struggle with my left and right. I get my words sometimes mixed up, which kind of links into my dyslexia as well. So I sometimes say, let's give an example, park car when I'm in car park. And I actually haven't got a clue that I've said something round the wrong way until someone corrects it and says, don't you mean car park? And I say, no, that's what I said. And they say, no, you didn't say that. Obviously, I've said park car. And it's the same, if anyone knows Kent at all and has heard of Dungeness, I sometimes call that Inverness. I don't know why, but it comes out like Inverness when I mean Dungeness, and it's an ex-nuclear power station. It's quite famous in Kent near Dover, I think it is. And dyscalculia or dyscalculus is linked again to dyslexia, because dyslexia has a number of traits. And it means I have difficulty with mathematics. I don't know my times table, for example. I know my fives for some weird reason. I don't know, I can't explain that. But I don't know my times table. So if somebody said to me, what's, I don't know, let's pick a figure, 7 times 9, I haven't got a clue. You might as well be talking to me in a different language that I don't know, because I would not understand what that would mean, because my brain doesn't have that logic sequencing. And I also struggle with distances. So someone said to me, what's 30 meters, for example? I actually don't know what that is. I understand it when you visually explain it. So if you said to me 30 meters is from that green car to that red car, I get that. I understand then what 30 meters is. So it's just a different way of kind of learning and looking at things. For example, in a lot of Asian countries, in Asia, they teach children a different way in terms of mathematics. So from an early stage, they'll have like a box and they have building blocks. You get the blocks out, and as you get the blocks out, you count, so 1, 2, etc. And for me, being visual, I get that. I never will ever understand a fraction or all those numbers that Einstein does, even though he was dyslexic and brilliant. But it's just not for me. And also what's quite amusing about the words dyslexia, it actually was coined by the Greeks. A lot of language has been developed by the Greeks, and it started out as a dys, which I can spell and say, but dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculus is a nightmare sometimes. It's taken me a long time to sort of learn how to spell it, or at least use the spell check on my read and write to get the right spelling. And sometimes I still have massive red under it. There was a guy called Rudolf Berlin, you can go and Google this, but Rudolf Berlin actually then coined the term dyslexia and dyslexic. So, and that was, I believe, in 1888 or around that time, sort of Victorian going into Edwardian period. So if we go to the next slide, please. So, as I said, maths, oh no. It's quite interesting that 1 in 7 of us, these are obviously estimated figures because you're reliant on people declaring their disability. So 1 in 7 is an estimate that we are neurodiverse. These figures change. 1 in 10 are approximately dyslexic. And then you can see the figures for dyspraxia and dyscalculus, 5 to 8%, etc. And I struggle with percentages, but I know that's quite a reasonably middle of the road figure. Now, maths, oh no, for me, I just struggle with it. But I'm sure that, and that's because of my condition, I can't change my disability. But there's ways around to assist. And I think that the example I gave earlier about the boxes coming, the blocks in a box counting out would have actually helped me a lot. So if we go to the next slide, please. So I'm sure that a lot of people with disabilities have had this said to them, which makes me really angry. And you can see my little angry face. What's wrong with you? Well, there's nothing wrong with me. Who are you? I'm your boss. Oh, but let's get rid of these negatives. Be positive, because you are strong wherever you come from, whatever your social mobility, whatever you decide to do in your life, whatever your disability, be positive. Always go back to positivity. I know that we sometimes have bad days and good days, that's inevitable, but look back at the positives and always look back and think, there's nothing wrong with me. Why would someone say there's something wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me. But I've obviously had that said to me, and most people I've spoken to who've had disabilities have certainly had it said to them. What's wrong with you? As though, we're all the same. So it's really about looking at the positives of what you can do. Some of you are students, some of you are already in your careers. And if you are students, you're looking at what sort of career you're looking at doing in terms of maybe leadership, looking at where you want to be in your life. And you might want to be a doctor. You might want to be a lawyer. You might want to be the Prime Minister. You might want to do something completely different, be an aid worker, do whatever you want to do. Do not let somebody say what's wrong with you. Why can't you be that doctor? I can't be that doctor because I live in a council flat. Rubbish. You can be that doctor. I can't do this because I don't know anyone in the arts industry to be a film director. Rubbish. You can do what you want to do. So be strong, be brilliant and amazing, because you are. You're all amazing. You're here, you're learning, you're doing what you want to do. So never let someone say what's wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with you. Next slide, please. And we hopefully have a happier face. No, we haven't got a happier face. We've got data. It's fine, fine. Doing a sterling job on the slides, by the way. So some data, and as I said before, these are just estimates. These are just figures that people have declared. There's probably a lot more who have disabilities in the UK. Remember, there's physical disabilities, hidden disabilities. So it's about 14.9 million. And that's a lot of people who have dreams, who want to do things and achieve things, and sometimes they get pushed back. So you'll see from this, on the 2nd of December 2019, there was a labour force survey that revealed that disabled people were over a third less likely to be employed than non-disabled people. That's quite a huge figure. So that isn't right. We can't have a situation where you've got people with disabilities who are saying, I've got a job, I don't want to progress. I've got a job. Great, you've got a job, but look at the bigger picture. If you want to develop, if you want to be your manager's boss, go for it. Don't let anything hold you back, ever, because that's what happened to me. So we'll go on to that in a moment, but do not let anything hold you back. Live those dreams. If you want to be a film director or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever you happen to want to be, do it. Don't let someone say, what's wrong with you? You can't do it, because you can. Next slide, please. So this is some legal stuff. You'll see my little banner thing. So the Equality Act 2010 was a hard fought out piece of legislation that actually provides legal framework and rights for people with disabilities, as well as other protected characteristics within the Act. About 25 years ago, which has recently been in the news a couple of months ago, there was lots and lots of campaigns for basic rights for people with disabilities. For example, a person in a wheelchair would be prevented from going into a restaurant because there'd be steps, and the restaurant might say to them, you're not coming here in that thing. So 25 years isn't a long time, and we're still talking about disability, and we're still asking for certain rights that we can obtain. But this act was a result of all those campaigns 25 years ago. So the Equality Act does provide a framework and gives protected characteristics for those with disabilities, race, gender, religion, and so forth. And it gives a definition there. So disability, a physical or mental impairment. The impairment has a substantial long-term adverse effect, their ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. So the key words are substantial. Well, if you have a disability, it's a lifelong condition. You know, I realise that as we age, we may develop disabilities, musculoskeletal, arthritis, or things like that. But dyslexia, talking about my own disability, which is a non-visible disability, is a lifelong condition. I can't suddenly say, oh, well, I can spell and read and write excellently overnight, because it's never going to be cured. So when you have the Equality Act that will protect you, and you think you may have a disability, you're not sure, you can obtain workplace or reasonable adjustments to assist you. So, for example, I use my adaptive equipment. If you have a bad back, you may be able to get a chair or special software, lots of different things. So don't be afraid to ask. If you're not sure, just ask. The answer can either be yes or no, but you can always go back to the Equality Act to assist you. Next slide, please. Right, here we go, the start of my education. It was rubbish, absolute appalling. So we're going to talk a bit about my education, which will amuse you. Primary school was excellent. Had a great time at primary school, lots of fun, lots of naughtiness because of problems at home, manifesting at school. But the headmaster was excellent with children. He just knew how to cope with children that had some difficulties. And although you were kind of getting told off, you weren't really. He was just so good with children. I just, you know, he was just amazing. And primary school was a good experience, having fun, learning lots of new things. Although I did struggle at school, and my writing was very bad, my reading was bad. I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I always had written a diary from the age of 7, because I always liked writing and hearing about stories. And I daydream for hours at school, until the point comes where someone tugs you in your shirt saying, Sam, wakey, wakey. And I was actually riding a rainbow somewhere in my head. So lots of daydreaming. The problem started when I went to secondary school. I had a bit of a bad reputation. I was bullied, not by my peers, I hasten to add, but by the system, unfortunately. Like a lot of dyslexics, and my experience is very similar, I was told that I was stupid, I was lazy, I wouldn't amount to anything, stand up in class and read, which I struggled with, told off for my spelling and my writing, told basically I was useless and why am I there? So one day I decided at the age of 14 I was going to walk out of school. I was fed up with it. And I walked out and I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to be in this world. And I went to the train station and a friend called me back and said, Oi, Sam, where are you going? I said, well, I've had enough, I'm leaving, goodbye. And they said, no, we've got maths. Well, of course, maths was my favourite subject, but at least I could daydream in maths. And be in a story somewhere until the teacher sort of said, you know, what you're doing. And I just said, I don't know, I don't understand it. When I was 14, I just had enough. But when I was 15, it was time for exams and getting ready for exams. And they you know, and I said, oh, should I, you know, what we're doing about exams. And I'd always been creative though. I loved art, I loved sport at school, I loved my stories, but that was just ignored. It was just terrible, really. But I had friends, I had a good friend network, which was really nice. But when it came to the exams, I was told I was too stupid to enter any. So I left school at 15 with no qualifications whatsoever to my name. Both my parents hadn't been to university or college or anything like that. My mother had been to drama school, but my father hadn't. And so I got a job washing pots on Hastings Pier, because although my parents are originally from London, they moved to Sussex when we were younger. So we lived in Hastings, Brighton, and now I live in Kent. But being creative had always been in my blood. And like I said, I would just daydream forever. But I left school with no qualifications, and my mental health and my low self-esteem just kind of went to the core of the earth. It was touching the core of the earth, probably reaching out to the universe, because that's how low I felt. So if we go to the next slide, please. So this is my little poem. So don't put the boot in learning, and my little boot there. So, my reading, writing might be upside down. I get confused easily. Left and right is different. And maths is a scientific entity. My brain just works like spaghetti. All I want is to be treated equally. And there's such a lot in just those few words about the fact that it's about inclusion and being treated equally and not kind of being excluded, because that's how I felt at that time. So if we go to the next slide, please. So when I was 18, I was unemployed. I had very limited money. I had lots of difficulties in my life at that point. And I didn't have any qualifications. I didn't know what direction my life was going to be. So I went for a job interview, like in a posh boutique supermarket in Brighton. And I did the thing on the computer and all the rest of it. And the person interviewing me said, "Oh no, you're not suitable. You won't amount to much," quote unquote. That is exactly what he said, hence my very dark cloud, because I felt the weight of the earth on my shoulders. And I thought, is that it? At 18, I can't even get a job stacking shelves or cleaning in a supermarket. And I just thought, well, there's just no value. I just didn't understand why I couldn't progress, and why somebody would say that to me. And I felt terribly down again. It, whacked my mental health again, because the test I had to do was riddled with spelling mistakes, and there was the dreaded green and the dreaded red. I even bought, now this might make you laugh, it certainly makes me laugh anyway. I even went out and bought a Ladybird book on grammar and spelling, because to this day, I don't understand grammar. It's too complicated. And I feel that I'm down with Shakespeare, because Shakespeare in his first folios did not use grammar. The actors just had to guess when they had to go on stage, and it worked. So if it's good enough for Shakespeare, it's good enough for me. That's what I say. So I never understood about the nouns and the consonants or whatever they're called. And the Ladybird Book of Grammar, which is for 5-year-olds, didn't help me either. So there was no hope. But I remember those words. But then I was invited, I joined a creative writing group, and they didn't judge me. And that was the first time in my life that I wasn't judged. They accepted my stories, the content of the stories. They didn't worry about the grammar and the spelling and the topsy-turviness of my writing, because it gets a bit upside down in terms of the structure. Sometimes when you write an essay, you have the start, the middle, and the end. Mine usually sometimes ended up with the start being the middle, the end being the start, or all over the place. So that's why it's good with some of the software I use, because it helps with the structure of chronology, especially when I'm writing projects. But I always get someone to proofread. They said, "Oh, come along to Brighton Free Festival and you can read one of your poems," because, as I said, I'd always been creative with stories in my head. And I said, "There's no way you're going to get me to perform at a festival in front of people reading a poem that I'm going to struggle reading." And they said, no, just do what you're comfortable in and just do it. You'll be brilliant. So I'd never, ever had someone say I'd be brilliant before. It's a bit like that concept before when I said, "What's wrong with you?" All my life, I thought something was wrong with me because that's what I've been told. And for someone then to say that I had some value and that I'd be brilliant, I wasn't used to that. So anyway, I went to this event, I read my poem, and people were clapping. And I thought, they must have made a huge mistake, because I was looking around myself thinking there must be some famous person behind me that they're clapping on, waiting for him to come onto the stage or something. But it actually turned out, by my utter amazement and surprise, that they were actually clapping for me. And that was the first time I felt valued. Now, there's going to be a public health warning for the next slide, so I hope you're ready, because it's going to be very, very difficult for you. Are you ready? Go! Next slide, please. Yay! See? It wasn't as bad as all that, was it? Now, he is called, or he was called, I lost him, unfortunately. Well, he was an old boy. Hello, Spanner. Unique, you see. He was unique because he had an unusual name. I've never heard a dog called Spanner before. He had one ear that goes up and one ear goes down, that you can see from the lovely picture. And he had a pink and blue tongue, which you might be able to see from the slide. So he was unique in himself. But that dog, I tell you, he saved me. I told him all my problems, whatever day I had, there was always that waggly tail and a lovely smiley face to greet me. So that was really nice. So next slide, please. So this wasn't too good. As I said, when I was 18, I was struggling. And one of those struggles was that I ended up homeless, because as I alluded to at the start of my talk, my parents were at war with each other, unfortunately, and they ended up finally divorcing, which split everybody up. And I ended up homeless, as did my sister, for a short period of time, but then she met somebody and she was with that person. But I ended up homeless. I was sleeping in a car. I was sofa surfing. I was staying on friends' floors. And I remember going to a public loo to wash my hair. When I was 18, my hair was really long. And I've got quite dry hair, fine hair, and it's quite difficult to comb. Sometimes it gets quite angly. So I use a lot of conditioner. So I remember having coconut conditioner lined up along the sink in the public toilets, and my shampoo and all my stuff I need. And people will walk in and there's me over the sink with this mass of hair being cleaned with it furiously with this coconut shampoo. And people had this whiff of this lovely smell. And then I sometimes went around friends' houses, it was a whole range of different places. And Spanner, my dog, was with me. And then I remember going to this in Brighton, if anyone's been or knows Brighton, it's a seaside town. It's a bit like London by the sea, and it's got beautiful Victorian and Regency style buildings, really stunning. And one of the buildings of this massive Regency house overlooks Brighton Pier. And when I'm bored, I sometimes watch a programme called Four in a Bed, and it's about B&B owners who judge each other's B&Bs on breakfast, cleanliness, what the place looks like, all that kind of stuff. And then they win a plaque at the end of it, an award. And I watched this programme and I thought, I recognise that place. And I actually stayed at this B&B before it became a very posh boutique B&B in Brighton, at the top, so it's the penthouse suite. But when I stayed there was debris everywhere, wires, rubbish, building rubbish everywhere, stairway that was half done with nails coming out. And now I can actually say that I'm the proud person to have stayed there, but I didn't spend hundreds of pounds on one night. I stayed there for free, so yippee for me. So I was pleased with that. But then, my life changed. So next slide, please. So this is a picture of an old guy in rags, and it just shows you about a chance encounter, because I was walking along Brighton High Street or somewhere in Brighton with my dog, and this guy stopped, and he had massive big black rimmed glasses that were filthy. I don't know how he could see out of them. Holes in his jackets, papers bulging everywhere. He looked, you know, I actually thought he was homeless, but he had something distinguished about him. And we got talking, and he said, "Oh, I think you're dyslexic." I must have said something around the wrong way or something, the way maybe I come across, I don't know, but he said, "I think you're dyslexic." I never heard of dyslexia, didn't know what he was talking about. And I sort of went, "Oh, right, okay," just pretended I knew. I didn't know what he was going on about. Anyway, he turned out to be a professor of law at the University of Sussex. So it just shows you can never judge a book by its cover. And he also did some moonlighting at the local college. He's not around anymore, unfortunately. I tried to locate him a few years ago. And he taught at night school at the local college. And he encouraged me to go there. And at first I was dead against it. And I was saying, "I am not going to college. People with brains go to college. I'm stupid." And he was, apart from the writing group, he was one of the people who said, "No, you're not. What's wrong? There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to learn in a different way." But it took him a few attempts to get me to go. And I eventually signed up, and I passed my GCSEs because he mentored me. He went slower and he went through things. So if I didn't understand anything, he went through it with me. I always sat at the back because all my life I've been told I was stupid and thick. So I didn't want to be at the front where I could be picked on for question. I wanted to be hiding at the back. And he mentored me. So I got my GCSEs. I passed A-levels. I went to university. In fact, near your neck of the woods, I studied at Staffordshire University, Stoke-on-Trent site. And I studied law, I did creative writing, I did philosophy, environment, a whole range of different subjects. And I got a Bachelor of, I'm an LLB Bachelor of Laws 2-1. I got a 2-1 degree. My friends at university helped me. They put things on the whiteboard for me because I still hadn't told anyone I was dyslexic. Didn't want to say anything, so I didn't get extra time. I didn't get any help, but my friends knew. So they put examples on the whiteboard so that I could digest things and have thinking time to go through things. I didn't want to be diagnosed. I didn't want a label. I didn't want to be treated differently or have that stigma. And I think that happens with a lot of people with disabilities. They want to be treated like anybody else, to have an inclusive society like anybody else does. So, so I got my exams. I have won awards for my writing, for my poems and my plays. One of my plays was on TV in Gibraltar about the First World War. I wrote a play about the First World War. I do writing workshops for young kids, making writing fun for all abilities. I tell them they don't have to worry about spelling and grammar, which horrifies the teachers, but it's just for that hour. Then they have to do whatever they've got to do. And then the teacher's face kind of comes back to colour. You know, it doesn't drop like it does normally when I say, don't worry about spelling and grammar, just have fun writing. And I just felt that I also took my show to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival called The Amazing Dyslexic Poetry Show, highlighting awareness about dyslexia and hidden disabilities. And I worked as a lawyer, representing suspects, representing people who needed help. I also work in disability as well, highlighting various projects that I'm involved in. And I'm published, I've got a book, I'm writing my second book, I'm doing a project on the NHS. So all these things have happened since this guy in rags helped me. And the guy that didn't help me was the one who said I was not valued and I wouldn't amount to anything. But if you're positive and you start to believe in yourself, and believe me, it took years of counselling to get to this stage. If you're positive and believe in yourself, you can become that Prime Minister. You can become that doctor or lawyer or industry person or whatever you want to do, set up your own business. You can do it. You can. So I am dyslexic and proud of being dyslexic. So I highlight that through my writing. So I thought I would read a few poems to you before we go on to questions. So we go to the next slide, please. So that's my Turner entry. It won the award for the Turner. Yay, not really, kidding, wish it had. But it's my little Lowry picture. You're not useless, you're not stupid or lazy, because we are not. Next slide, please. So I am dyslexic and proud. That's what my writing looks like when I was 18. It's a lot better now. It's still quite messy, but you can just about work out the words. We Are the Amazing Dyslexics is one of my poems that I'm going to read. Not right now, but in a second. But that's what I look like now. But I'm happy. I have a smiley face. I'm very happy with my rainbow hair, and because I am dyslexic and proud. And nobody should be told that they can't do something when they have the opportunities to do it, wherever you're from. So next slide, please. So a bit of my poetry. Now I call myself Sam Rapp the Dyslexic poet, highlighting my dyslexia through my writing. I do write about lots of different genres, but I always come back to the dyslexic side of things. So I thought I'd start one of my poems off with a little different sort of poem, which is maybe a bit scary, but I'm sure you'll be fine. It's called The Snow Has Gone. The gods have put the roof on. The snow has gone. Mud sodden socks from holes in old worn boots slip on uneven paths, and wet tree stubs reach to blood on branches from a fox's kill, invisible. Police tape conceals a space, no evidence of foul play, but speckles of gold dust from the devil who has lost and walked this way. There are no birds chatting. A lone dog barks, but is scared. The woods are different today. That's just a little one. Scary, scary. I read that for Halloween, and I had some other scary ones. So my next poem is called We Are the Amazing Dyslexics, which is one that I took to Edinburgh. And I wanted to have the positive message about any disability. Remember, disabilities can be physical, hidden. And I wanted the positive message of what we can do. So I hope this poem kind of goes that way. We are the amazing dyslexics. We are funny. We are witty. We have no apology or pity. We focus at a slower speed. We are not greedy. It takes us time to read. We are the amazing dyslexics. Our minds work in many different ways. They scramble about until we decide to spurt things out. When we are ready for the words or the numbers. We are just incredibly unique when we speak. We are not scared of Zeus as he unleashes his thunder. We sit back and chill and hang loose. We have so many gifts. We can use dragons to help them with their words. Some have a mismatched botch and it arrives on the page upside down. People have been known to stand on their heads to engage. We are the amazing dyslexics. We are doctors, judges, inventors, film directors, and so much more. We can paint pictures that have magical harmony. We can dance with Bacchus and love like Aphrodite. We can achieve greatness, walking on the moon and kissing the sun. Being dyslexic, we are our own person. We don't follow like sheep. We have our own bleat. We are your best friends and soulmates. We are the amazing dyslexics, like Einstein, Branson, Whoopi Goldberg, Will.i.am, even Da Vinci written into history. We are the amazing dyslexics. So that's a positive message about dyslexia. And this next poem, I've just got a few more. This next poem is called My Mermaid. We're okay for time, are we? I can't see on my screen, but I assume we are.
Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes left, so perhaps one more and then some questions.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much. Right, so I'll end my poems on my world. My world is upside down. My world is orange with squiggly black texts. My world is different to yours. My world is cruel. My world is dancing on an upside down sun, staring at the moon and touching them both in unison to a tune that makes no sense. My world is a mess as I try to calculate on my fingers up to 10. My world is undressed. My world is impressive, fun and full of laughter. My world sees things differently. My world is chaotic, but organized in my mind as I know what I want to say. The words come out in my own conventional style and way. My world sees beauty, large trees stretching on lined lawns where leaves are sprinkling and birds pecking. My world has brick walls as numbers bypass me. My world doesn't follow structure. My world has its own clock, like trains on a track. Listen, you can hear her as nature's heart beats back. My world is okay. My world is dyslexic. My world is dyspraxic. My world is dyscalcular. My world is perfect, just for me. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for inviting me. Please put the next slide up. There's some signposting. I am dyslexic and proud, and thank you so much to Megan and her team for inviting me to present today. So please do ask any questions that you would like to ask me. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sam. It's so inspirational to hear you. Amrit, can we put the last slide up, and can we ask people if they want to be unmuted to ask any questions? Is that possible, Amrit, to unmute people? So has anybody got any questions? Please put your microphones on or put them in the chat and I'll monitor the chat. Has anybody got any questions? It's always difficult. Sam, while people are thinking, now what kind of advice and pointers would you give somebody who wishes to enter the kind of a professional field? I mean, you talked about being helped and you know, you've got your law, you went to university. So you know, if you were to give any advice to somebody, what would be the kind of top tips?
I think just be yourself, settle into whatever your disability is and whatever you decide to do, whether you want to go into law or whatever it happens to be, then just go for it. Knock on those doors and say, this is who I am and this is what I can add value to your business. And I want to do that. So for me, I was lucky in many ways because I met that guy, and then to become a lawyer, I met somebody actually on a demonstration, and he offered me a job, but that doesn't happen very often. And I think it's just sometimes luck, but I think look at your direction and write to people, say what your skills are, and don't be afraid to ask the difficult questions or have those conversations, but just be yourself and don't let anybody say that you can't do anything that you want to do because you should just go and do it. I don't know if that's answered it.
Yeah, I think what you said is something really important that I strongly believe in, but it takes you a while because you're so battered by everybody to actually go, I have gifts. Not everything is negative, that actually there's lots of things with the brain that I have, I do really, really well. I might not do some things brilliantly, but there's a lot of things I can do incredibly well, but it may be different to the way that other people do it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely right. And it is about that gift and making employers aware of your value and your talent. You know, being dyslexic or neurodiverse, you think differently. It is boring being all the same. Let's have some colour and amazingness, and you know, the world would be a better place.
Have we got any questions from the audience? You are. I think Amrit, can they switch the microphones on?
Yeah, they should be able just to unmute.
So if you've got any questions to Sam, if you want to unmute and just ask a question.
Yeah, ask away.
So Phil Greystock has said, what advice would you give to managers who have people with dyslexia in their team?
Oh, that's a great question, Phil. Thank you for that. To ask the person with the disability what they need. So they have dyslexia. My dyslexia is different from someone else's dyslexia and so forth. So speak to them, open up a dialogue of communication, assuming they've declared, and ask them what support they would need to assist them in their working practice. So for me, I have software, I have MindView. For some other people with dyslexia, they might not need that. They might need different colours or software on their computer. Mine goes orange. So just ask them, open up that conversation, just ask them what they need. And they'll be really receptive. They'll be really grateful that you thought about them in that way and that you are willing to assist them. So I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you. Anybody else got a question first for Sam? We've got about 5 minutes left. I've never known people shy.
I think there might be some questions that Amit had.
Amit, have you got some questions that have come in?
Yeah, just bear with me, I'm getting them up. So there's one here that says, did you find it difficult to get adaptive equipment for your disability?
Yes and no. I because I wasn't diagnosed until an adult, and that was really because I was having some professional difficulty. I was struggling with the work, and I had the diagnosis, and then I didn't really know where to go to ask for help. I thought, well, I've got a piece of paper that says I'm dyslexic and various other traits, but what next? And it wasn't really until I got involved in disabled charities that they sort of guided me to what I was entitled to have and ask for. And once I'd asked for that equipment, it was great. I was able to get all the help and equipment available to me, but I went through quite a long time without it because I just didn't really know where to go. But once I asked, then it came. So, but I realised that some people don't have that experience. Some people wait quite a long time for it. So, I hope that answers the question.
Has anybody else got any other questions? If not, we can take some that have been already submitted. Nobody else got any questions? Amrit, have we got another one that's been submitted?
Oh, from Phil, I think.
Oh, yes. Yeah. This is a good one from Phil. We've been having discussions about extra time for student assignments and whether this should be a blanket approach applied to every assignment, which is what we currently do, or up to the individual student whether they need or want to use extra time or not. Realising things are different, but what would be your view?
I think that a blanket approach can be quite tricky because not everybody's dyslexia or neurodiversity or disability is the same. So I personally need quite a lot of time to digest information, read information and edit information. So when I'm doing a writing project, it takes me a long time to write it and then edit it. So I think the answer is that everybody is different, and it would really depend on their assessment, if they've had an assessment and what the expert report says, in order to assist them. They might need to have breaks throughout the assessment or whatever, the exam or whatever it happens to be, so that they can have that thinking time to go back to it. So everybody's different. I think it's quite difficult to have a blanket approach, because everybody's dyslexia is different to the next person's and so forth. So I think that's probably a conversation you'd have to have with the students per se, in relation to what assistance they would need based on their expert assessment, I would have thought.
Lovely, thank you. Yes, he says that echoes the thoughts we've had. And I think what you said there, Sam, has been really important. Very often you get an exam plus 25%. So 3 hours plus whatever 25% of 3 hours is. But that makes it more stressful, longer, you're more tired. And actually having that additional time, as you say, you might need, actually, let me make sense of the questions, then let me have a break. Then let me answer that first question, then let me have a break. Then let me answer that second question, let me have a break. Rather than just adding on more time to something that's already long and stressful. So I think it is about just a calculation of more time isn't actually that helpful. It can actually be more stressful, because you're there, everybody else gets up. I know I had that in my GCSEs. Everybody else got up and walked out after 2 hours. And I'm still sat there feeling really pathetic, really obvious, and actually just even more panicked because everybody else has left. So I think it is about being smarter with what we do, rather than just adding more of a stressful situation. So
yeah, and that experience sounds awful, and that can isolate people, because they can feel quite, if they want to join in, they can feel quite stigmatized, because they feel that they're not the same if everybody's getting up to leave and they're just on their own. And there's, like you say, the added pressure to finish the task. So I think maybe that needs to look into, to support people. And maybe if people have got extra time, then maybe everybody should have it, so that they all stay together. I don't know what the answer is really, but it's not a nice place to be if you're signalled out, is it?
No. Sam, we've come to the end of our time now. I just want to say thank you so much for being such an inspirational person and sharing your journey with us. This session has been recorded and will be made available to everybody. We'll just be adding the subtitles. But just on behalf of the University of Wolverhampton, thank you very much for really starting off this International Day, United Nations International Day for Disabled People, but from a really inspirational and leadership approach, which affirms the good things about being dyslexic, being proud, having an amazing brain, but I would be biased in that situation. But thank you so much, Sam, and we hope to hear some more of your work in the future. So thank you very much on behalf of the University of Wolverhampton.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Lots of people saying thank you. Lots of people saying how inspirational it is. And very much people are really loving your poetry and sharing your experiences. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to ask Amrit now to